On the fourth day, I did probably 450 grams of carbs for my last meal. So a total of like about 1,500. And then, then that's the photos you see here are the ones. That's how I ended up the morning of the photo shoot. What's up, everyone? So some of you were interested in how I achieved this 6.6 pound increase in 5 days in this improved body composition. Well, using this one specific supplement, no, I'm just kidding. If only it was that easy. So I had to prepare for a photo shoot. I wanted to prepare for a photo shoot with Angela again. If you haven't already checked her out, please do so at Digital with Angela. I'll post it in the below or whatever. So realistically, how I achieved this was actually the steps leading up to it. And so that's like the non-sexy part. Everybody wants the quick solution, the instant gratification. You know, a few people jumped into my DMs, and I don't know what to say, jumped into my DMs and everything and was like, give me tips and stuff. And the reality is, like, I've been focusing on gut health and improving mitochondrial function and improving liver function and you name it, all these systems, thyroid, so on and so forth. And ultimately, when you focus on the internal aspects and you start with like the root of things, you know, food digestion and assimilation and stress management, adrenal health, liver health, thyroid health, hormone health, you name it, right? It makes it so much easier to do these drastic adjustments, whether that be a calorie surplus or a calorie deficit or whatever you're looking to achieve. So this is why I tell people, like, you kind of set your body up and then to be as functional as possible. And so, like, let's say you get into an instance where you put on a bit of unwanted weight that you're not happy with, then you can just go into like a severe calorie deficit for 2 weeks and actually make some drastic changes. But the average person, the general population, if they were to try to do that, let's say they were eating 2,000 calories and they tried to drop it down to 1,300 for 5 days to make some quick changes, the body's not going to respond. There's not optimal thyroid. There's not optimal hormones. The liver's already stressed. Gut health is suboptimal. You're just going to create more water retention, sleep issues, anxiety, whichever, right? So this is why you take a good portion of the year and you make sure you're eating adequate amounts of food. You make sure you're getting proper nourishment via micronutrients, you know, that you're sleeping well, that you're avoiding, you know, like high amounts of processed foods and alcohol, that kind of stuff. So that when it comes down to it, it's like, oh, I got a photo shoot or I have a beach day or something like that. It's really easy and you could do it in a very short period, achieve specific body composition results to help you feel better about what you're going into. And so because of the protocol leading up to this required less calories, I had lost a bit of size. And for those that don't know, like whenever I like express my emotion towards people that, oh no, my weight is dropping, you know, you get all these people that, oh, it must be nice and whatnot. And it's actually like the same emotion that people struggle with, that they experience when they're struggling to lose weight, is the same emotion that I struggle with to gain weight, because that's something that's been a problem my entire life. And people could be like, well, that's a good problem to have. Well, once again, too, the same mental aspect, you know, suffering with body dysmorphia and such, it's not fun, right? And I also struggle to lose fat. I can lose weight, but I don't burn fat the greatest. There's a big difference between weight loss and fat loss. But anyways, so realistically, I have been setting my body up to do something like this, to respond really, really well. And how I approached this was I come off a few days of very low calories, and prior to that, cycling this as well to really change that metabolic flexibility, improve insulin sensitivity, get better at using fat as a fuel source, all that kind of stuff, just decrease that overall inflammation. And the first step that I took was jacking the hell out of my carbs. So I went from, I think, 450 grams of carbs for 3 days. So 3 days of the week, I do 450 grams of carbs. And then 2 days of the week, I would do zero carbs, 3-2-3-2 is kind of how I would do it. And so then I went from 450 grams of carbs, while realistically coming from zero for 2 days, up to 1,000 to 1,200, kind of rough in between the two. And so for the first 3 days, or for the first 2 days, I did 1,000 to 1,200. And then on the third day, I did probably 1,400 grams of carbs. And like in this video here, you'll see that, like my post-workout shake was getting close to 200 grams of carbs. And then what I really did though is, because I sleep much better if I load up a lot of carbs before bed. So I was having anywhere from 250 to 300 grams of carbs before bed for my final, like not before bed, but like my final meal. And then on the day before the photo shoot, so on the on the fifth day, on the fourth day, I'm getting my dates confused. On the fourth day, I did probably 450 grams of carbs for my last meal. So a total of like about 1,500. And then that's the photos you see here are the ones. That's how I ended up the morning of the photo shoot. And you can be like, oh, that's insane, whatever. I promise you, no anabolics were used. Rightfully so. No anabolics were used. My body's in a vulnerable state where I don't want to be pushing something like this. But because I prepared coming up to this, I was able to take this short duration and hammer the hell out of carbs to achieve this physique. But it wasn't just the simplicity of eating more carbohydrates, because it doesn't always work like that. Yes, my body was in an optimal position to utilize these carbohydrates, but I also used a training stimulus to achieve this. And so realistically, what I did was 8 sets of 8 reps in only 30-second rest period. Now, what this does is this stimulates a molecule known as AMPK. And if you look into that, you'll see that it's a very nutrient partitioning molecule. And what I mean by that is it really opens the receptors to accept more insulin and take in more glucose. So it's just like, you're going from using this tiny little door to get glucose through to like this big, gateway now that your muscles just soak up this glucose. So the kicker with this whole transformation and everything is it's very short-lived, because it's just glycogen retention, it's just water retention, sodium, all that kind of stuff, giving you that full filled out look, which is great for photo shoots or great for, like I said, going to the beach. As soon as you go back down in calories and you start dropping carbohydrates and such, you begin to lose that fullness because you didn't build like actual muscle tissue. Not only is it like damn near impossible to build any sort of muscle tissue in 5 days, but this training process in itself can actually stop the growth of true contractile proteins. Like actual muscle fiber, which is fine because, like I said, I'm just preparing for a photo shoot. It's not like it's a bad thing, because it actually potentiates you if you wanted to go in. So if I wasn't going back into my mold and gut protocol, I could have gone into a hypertrophy phase with this newfound glycogen retention, which is going to increase my output in my workouts to come, so I can achieve more of a stimulus, whether it be a hypertrophy phase or whichever, right? In terms of building actual true contractile tissue. So that's kind of the benefit of it. But realistically, as soon as you diet back down, you're going to lose that. And so that's where you see like a lot of people when they'll do these metabolic workouts, and they think they put on muscle, and then, this happens to like a lot of competitors sometimes. They'll do these throughout the year and they'll think they'll put on muscle. And then when they diet back down to stage, leanness, they barely gain any muscle. And it's because this isn't really a great muscle building phase. It's more of just like, a short-term physique results kind of thing. Or like it would be a great phase to use to prepare yourself to step on stage, for example, because that's you want a carb load prior. And doing so, you can really help transport this glucose using this style of training phase. So for me, like I said, I did 8 by 8, so 8 sets, 8 reps, 30-second rest periods. Now, I was able to do that because I was eating such an abundance of carbohydrates. I wouldn't recommend somebody doing 8 by 8. I also wouldn't recommend like anybody doing this type of training phase unless you are trainable in that stimulus. So I'm thinking my next podcast that's going to come out is going to be around training stimuluses and starting to educate people on this so they can understand. But you can't just hop into something like this and eat a bunch of carbs, because if you're already like in an inflamed state, you know, and your metabolic capacity is pretty poor or your conditioning is pretty poor, what will happen is if the cell cannot keep up with this training, it's actually going to create more inflammation. And then that inflammation is going to decrease the nutrient partitioning, and it's going to give you more of a watery, flatter look. And so this is why, like, it's not just as simple as jumping into this. So like when people are like, oh, give me tips and everything, you know, like it depends, right? You could try this, but if you're not, you know, ready for this training phase, then it's going to make you look worse. And so like some of my clients have experienced this. We've gone into this style of training and they gain a little bit of weight. They look a little watery. And so then I say, okay, let's actually give you more carbohydrates. And then they like lose their minds. They're like, okay, that doesn't make any sense. You'd think we would have to reduce carbs. Well, realistically, you were not ingesting enough carbohydrates to support the recovery or the performance of this training phase. So increasing the carbs, they would check in the next week, their weight would actually drop. They would become tighter looking, dropping that water, less inflamed, and actually look fuller by doing so. And that's because this carbohydrates are extremely important in this training phase. So that's like when you see bodybuilder competitors and everything, and they're doing like 40 plus reps on low carbohydrate, right? The only reason that they're sustaining this is because they're running performance enhancing drugs, because any natural individual would not be able to perform that. And so I see that a lot of the times. They feel like crap, but because the drug was able to take them to that place, even without the proper nutrients. Because when you look at, which I'll go over more in the stimulus video, when you look at, you have like a bar of recovery, and then you have like all these other things that play a role, like the training stimulus, life, stress, digestion, sleep, whichever. If you exceed that bar of recovery, you're not getting those adaptations. Well, how do you increase that bar of recovery, like other than sleep and everything? Performance enhancing drugs. So then it gives you lots of room for adaptations at the sacrifice of your physiology, though. And that's why people feel like trash and die young when using performance enhancing drugs. You can use them safely. You just have to still treat it as if you were not on performance enhancing drugs. Once again, I'm not condoning that. That'll be a whole different podcast. Still don't do performance enhancing drugs, but people are going to do them anyway. So I would like to make a podcast or an educational video or whichever. Not that this is a podcast. This is just more a video of explaining how I achieved the 6.6 pound increase in the transformation in body composition in 5 days. So yeah, you know, I know everybody was probably going to watch this and hoping for like awesome tips to prepare for a photo shoot and everything. And like, really, it's just crushing their dreams. And, you know, people don't like me for this, but hey, whatever. I provide the information and do with it as you please. But yeah, that's ultimately how I achieve that. It's fun because you get to eat a lot of food, and I biased carbohydrates and I decreased my protein, so that way I wasn't like too excessive of calories. Same with fats. So majority of my caloric intake was made up. I think it was about 5,500 calories I was eating for those 5 days. Probably more because I did load up with like pasta and pancakes and such, and then like sushi at one point. And so yeah, I actually don't even know where my caloric intake was. I was just basing in my increase in carbohydrates off of the performance in the workout. So I did 4 workouts total. If my performance did not increase in that third workout, then I knew to increase carbohydrates, which it had in the third workout, but I knew there was room for more. So after that third workout, I increased my carbohydrates even more. Just a rough estimate. I wasn't too particular, as this is not like a bodybuilding competition or anything, and it was only going to be 5 days and then going back into my previous protocol. But then on the final day, I really ramped up the carbohydrates just to make sure that I would fully recover and fully fill out and prepare for the photo shoot the next day. So this is more for somebody who's already been following like a caloric deficit. If you've already been in a caloric surplus and you're struggling with like internal health issues, it's probably not the greatest. But if you've been in a caloric deficit, you feel good, all that kind of stuff, and all of a sudden you want to put on a little bit of size, which is obviously going to be, you know, not saying that women don't want this, but it obviously is more geared towards men, then this is something that you could use. As when it comes to losing weight, as mentioned, set your year up, your health up, so that you are optimal year round. So all of a sudden you get Okay, you got a call, somebody wants to do a photo shoot on this date. Oh no, I only have 3 weeks. Well, you've been eating a maintenance or surplus for a specific period of time. Your metabolism has adapted to that in a positive way, right? Everything's functional. You pull a buttload of calories. You should have a good response going into that and be able to drop a bit of weight, drop a bit of fat, and then maybe like 2 days before the photo shoot, you could do this incomplete rest method. So it's like 30-second rest periods, anywhere from 5 sets by 8 reps or 8 by 8 or whichever, and just to fill out a little bit, get some fullness, drop a bit of water and look pretty good for your photo shoot. So once again, sorry it's not super sexy and like instant gratification, but if you have any questions on that, please drop them in the comments or DM me or whichever. And yeah, let me know what you guys think of this, because I would like to do more videos like this. But thanks for all tuning in. Hope you have a great night.